This episode is brought to you by Living Proof Church, a non-denominational, spirit-filled church in Araby, Louisiana. Services are held Sundays at 10 a.m. and live streamed on YouTube. Visit us at livingproof-church.com to plan your visit.
You are listening to Commission 6-8.
It is Wednesday, November 26th in the greatest country on earth. I'm your host, Randy Millett, and this is Commission 6-8. Today, we have a very special guest, Daniel Kwak, joins the show to talk about Trump's deportation policies and the dangers of unchecked mass illegal immigration. So let's go! All right, now special guest today, we have someone very dear to me, a very close friend and mentor of mine, Mr. Daniel Kwak. As he likes to say, one half of the Kwak brothers. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. And I'm going to let you do your intro, tell us about who you are. But first, I want to tell a story because I'm part of Daniel's real estate investment mentorship program. And he had an event in Chicago about 2 weeks ago. We were up there for the weekend in Chicago. So I booked the plane ticket. You know, we stayed at the hotel. It was in Naperville, I believe. So my wife asked me if I was going to rent a car to come down, to go from the airport to the hotel. But we looked at the forecast, and there was a chance of wintry mix. And I was like, Randy doesn't drive in wintry mix. And then lo and behold, we wake up Sunday morning when it's time to go back to the airport, and there's this mysterious white stuff all over the ground. Yeah, so Randy doesn't do that. But regardless, it was an excellent event. Thanks for having us. I always love getting to see you in person. So just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that is surrounded by that white stuff all the time, right? Living in Chicago.
I don't know how you do it.
Listen, man, I actually don't mind it. Like when I love it when it's like minus 18, minus 20, because I just go out for a run. Like it's fantastic. It unlocks I think a lot of guys have that where it just unlocks something primal or, it's something instinctual. But yeah, my name is Daniel Kwak. Obviously, first and foremost, I'm a follower of Christ. I'm a first generation immigrant, like you mentioned. I'm an entrepreneur, husband, father. All the things that I guess you're supposed to do in life. But for me, like I love just waking up every single day and just doing what God asked me to do, man. That's kind of my mantra.
Amen. That's great. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit because I know you. So real estate investor, and he's an author. He has a book. This book actually changed my life when I read this book. He was kind enough to do the forward on my book, actually. And the name of your book is 0 to 75 Units in 1 Year. Available where?
Oh, just go to 0to75units.com. You can get it for free. I always tell people, listen, you could buy it on Amazon or you could just get it for free.
Right.
I would get it for free.
That's part of the story. I actually bought it before I realized I could get it for free.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Best $20 I ever spent. Right. So real estate investor, entrepreneur, author, and first generation immigrant. So let's dig into that. Tell us about how you got here, where you came from, your family.
Yeah. So our family, we were originally from South Korea, and we came here in the 90s, and man, I got to share this story because it's so cool. So when I was a little kid in Korea, like I loved basketball. Like basketball was like, I loved watching it. Like I thought the Korean basketball league, I thought those guys were like the best players, and like their center's like 6'3", right? But what drew me to it is I had a cousin who's about maybe 10 years, 15 years older than I am, and he played on a high school team. Right. So I was like 4 or 5 years old at the time. And, my cousin's obviously, a little over 10 years older. And, we would always go watch his games. And in our house in Korea, we had like the little, Fisher Price hoop or whatever thing that you could, shoot the little ball into. And so when we came here, one of the big concerns I have was like, oh man, like, do they have basketball? Right. Like, is this the end? Like, is this only a Korea thing? And like the flight to get here is like 14 hours, right? And, we get off, this is O'Hare Airport in Chicago. And, this is like the 90s. And this is where the gates in O'Hare used to have these like big box TVs in the corner. And, like nowadays, everyone's just on their phone, right? But back then, you either watch the TV or you're reading a newspaper or magazine. It was just one of those two. And so we get off, and I remember it was like nighttime. It was like 8, 9 o'clock. And I look up at the TV, and I see basketball. And I'm like super excited. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, but the guy, so there was a guy who had the basketball in his hand, right? And he was black. And I was like, I've never seen a black person before in my life, right? Because I grew up Korean. And I was like, wow, his skin is black. Like, that's really cool. And he does this thing where he has the ball, his back is to the basket, and he, does this jump. He jumps, but then he shoots the ball while he's midair. And I had never seen a basketball player or a human being do anything like that, right? Because for me, my exposure was Korean basketball, right? Korean guys like are verticals like 2 inches, right? And so this random black guy is, he's shooting it midair, and I'm like, wow, man, that's a really cool move. And I told myself, like, that's going to be my favorite player from now on, because it's the first player I've seen in my new country. And, he wore number 23, played for the Chicago Bulls. Yeah,
your favorite player and everybody else in the U.S.
That's right. And ended up being, the GOAT, right? Michael Jordan. And so that's kind of my first exposure to the United States. And I was like, man, maybe this place is pretty cool, And then immigrated here, and we grew up super poor, right? Like our first apartment we had in the United States as a family. Like it was one of those where you turn the lights on and the cockroaches, expand to the outwards of the room. Our rent, I still remember, was $380 per month. And we lived in this, Class D, just very, not well taken care of. Our landlords were slumlords pretty much.
Yeah.
And we got robbed multiple times while we were there. But yeah, man, late 90s, city of Chicago, family of 4 from South Korea.
So tell us what you mean. You said Class D apartments. I know you're a real estate guy. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so Class A is like super high-end luxury, right? You have pools, you have a gym, there's amenities, right? And then all the way down to Class D is, if I'm going to use the word ghetto, right? Like that's what Class D pretty much was.
Yeah, so Michael Jordan quickly became your favorite player. You just called him the GOAT. I think we might get a little hate email
He's the GOAT.
From the LeBron fans there.
Bring it on, man. Bring it on.
Yeah, no, I like it. All right, so the topic of the show, we're going to do immigration. There's been a lot of talk on the news, obviously, in this second Trump administration. A lot of people coming out against his immigration policies, or I should say deportation policies. And I'm going to read you off some stats. I pulled this from DHS. According to the DHS website, under the President Trump administration since January, they said 1.6 million people have self-deported. And they have over 500,000, actually 527,000 deportations since January. But I want to point out that the media is actually saying that those numbers are inflated, and those numbers aren't as high as the administration or DHS claims that they are. But I looked up previous administrations, and under Obama, his average was 942 deportations a day. Trump's first term was 680 to 800 per day, depending on the time of the year. During Biden, it was 742 a day, and now during Trump's second term, he's up to 878 today, but still not surpassing Obama's presidency. So my question is, and these sources come from TRAC, NBC, Migration Policy Institute. So why do you think that the liberal media, on one hand, is saying that Trump's inflating the numbers, but then in the exact same sentence, we hear him saying, he's Hitler and it's horrible, and he's committing atrocities?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, man. And you touched on a topic that's very obviously near and dear to my heart, right? And not only near and dear to my heart, but obviously my brother Sam, who and then my own parents, right? And we were certainly massive benefactors of eventually earning our citizenship here in the United States.
Right.
Trump's a really interesting guy, and I think at this point, especially when it comes to the media, right, and the media and even the topic of Donald Trump is something that I've covered for years now, even on my own YouTube channel or different podcasts. And he's kind of one of those guys where it's like, if you want views, mention his name.
Right.
And
Yeah.
even our YouTube videos, like some of the best YouTube videos that we've done, it usually has a picture of him on the thumbnail or has his name on the title or whatever it may be.
No such thing as bad publicity, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what? First and foremost, you got to hand it to the guy. He's an amazing marketer, right? I mean, he's
Absolutely.
an incredible marketer, regardless of whether or not you disagree with him or agree with him. You're going to talk about him. Right. And so I think a lot of times the media, especially the liberal media, loves to bring up the topic of immigration because they're now opening the door to use footage and to use, no pun intended, media of people being dragged out of their cars or
Right.
people being, or taken away from their families or, somebody's at work and, you see ICE agents coming and, and more oftentimes than not, the photos and the images, the videos that they use is rather extreme.
And it doesn't tell
now-
the whole story.
And it doesn't tell
It's a
the
clip.
whole story.
It's a 5-second clip of, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And which we hopefully in 2025 we're all smart enough to know that media and images, videos, they're incredibly easy to manipulate, right? Now, am I saying that what they're doing is appropriate, the way they're going about it? No, right? But at the same time, to your point, we don't know the full story. I can tell you as an immigrant myself, who's didn't get a citizenship until he was 20 years old after 14 years of being in the country, right? Like I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, right? I mean, I played sports, and at 20, I was on 2 fantasy football leagues, which I don't know if you can get more American than that, right? So I mean, but it was funny. Like I had to earn my citizenship as a guy that had to go through all that, and not only that, but while Obama was president, almost got deported, right? Like as a guy who had to go through that, it makes me incredibly sad. I think above anything else, the amount of ignorance that is being instigated when it comes to the topic of immigration. I know the media sometimes can be an easy punching bag, but let's be real, right? Like they are the primary instigators of ignorance when it comes to this particular topic, not just with Donald Trump.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think at the end of the day, it's all. I mean, I'm only 31 years old, right? I'm an incredibly young guy, but the Lord's blessed me with so many different experiences and allowed me to have been in so many different circles. And when I think about people who are outside of the kingdom of God, right? When I think about people that are outside of the loving arms of Jesus, it's all about the money.
Yeah.
It's all about the money. And when you think about media, right? Like it's crazy. And this is proof. Like if you're on social media, the best and the highest way to get engagement is this thing called rage bait, where you put something out on a reel, a TikTok or a short or something where it makes people angry to the point where they'll comment or they'll share it saying like, look how dumb this is, or I can't. But that's the way that people are gaining a following. And as we all know in 2025, the more eyeballs that you have, the more money that you make.
Right? Because the viewer is now the asset. The viewer is now what's being sold.
That's right. And you know what? From a traditional media standpoint, right, they're getting desperate because they're realizing that they're being outdone by the guys like Joe Rogan, by the Tucker Carlsons of the world, by the Candace Owens of the world, and even on the other end, right? I mean, people who have their own independent platforms that represent the other perspective. It's those guys too, and platforms like Fox, CNN, right? I mean, these guys are slowly realizing, we don't have as tight of a grip on journalism, on sharing information, on eyeballs like we used to do 20 years ago. And people are they're realizing, man, people are turning more to YouTube, Spotify, right? Even your independent podcast. People are realizing that. And so what they had to do, because when people start getting fearful, it's usually when they start losing that dinero, right? Is they start getting more and more extreme on what they have to talk about because now they realize they're competing against these other guys.
Right, competing against people that don't have the censorship, that don't have the machine behind them, right? And you hit on something really good. The media, the liberal media, or really just mainstream, right? The mainstream media it's been a machine, and it's been trusted. And I feel like they've lost America's trust, right?
Yeah.
Trust it's hard earned, but it's easily lost. And once you lose America's trust, like you said, they have to get more and more extreme, and they have to start basically, I don't want to say making things up, but twisting facts, twisting truths to push an agenda just to get eyeballs in front of the screen. Because, like you said, with the lack of censorship with independent podcasters, the Joe Rogans, people like that, people are searching for truth, you know? This generation is searching for truth. I think that's the theme in America. There's so much, and I hate using the word disinformation because it's so loaded, right? But people are really searching for truth, and it's a void that's currently in the mainstream right now.
You are listening to Commission 6-8.
Today's sponsor is freespoke.com. Freespoke.com is a search engine web browser that you need to be using, like today, right? We know that Google and Meta, big tech, they've all admitted to censoring political speech. And we know that they collect and sell your data. At Freespoke, they give you both sides to every story. They give you all the information. They give you political perspectives, and they label media bias left, right, or middle, so you know the information that you're consuming. When we do research for these shows, my producer and I exclusively use freespoke.com. Now, you can download the app and start browsing today for free. But if you want an ad-free experience, subscribe and give them promo code COM68. That's promo code COM, COM68. That will give you 35% off a yearly subscription. So make the switch today, use freespoke.com, and let's hold big tech accountable. That's freespoke.com. Think for yourself.
You are listening to Commission 6-8.
I'm going to go on to, my producer sent me a bunch of stuff. Now, I know that you're in Chicago, the Chicagoland area. And I have a lot of clips here from ICE protesting outside the facility, right? That's still going on. I saw it on the news this morning. It's Friday, so they're all lining up to protest. And some of these protests have become violent. And, well, first, let me get your opinion on that. Just what have you seen from being local, from being to the area? Because we see the national news, but go ahead and wait.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, for a lot of those people that are seeing these protests for the first time, especially in the city of Chicago, trust me, it's been happening for a while, right? It's just, regardless, it's just a matter of what are they protesting this time, you know? And people are saying there's violence because of these protests. Listen, in the city of Chicago, there's always been violence.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm from New Orleans. We fight for the record every year. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my city and your city, man. Yeah. We're competing not just in football, but also in city violence, I guess. So there's always been violence. It's just a matter of what violence and what protests are actually going to be reported, right, and actually shown on the TV screen. So I mean, first thing that I'll say is, for me, obviously as a follower of Jesus, it makes me incredibly sad that the amount of fear and ignorance has been escalated to the point where people are willing to be physical. Sure. From a spiritual standpoint, there's no one that celebrates division, physical violence as a result of that more than the enemy.
Absolutely. The
right?
author of confusion.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, the scripture says, right, he's the author of lies. Well, what do lies ultimately create? It creates separation. Whether it's separation from us and God, whether it's separation from one another, that's what the enemy wants. They want people to be isolated, because in isolation is where ignorance grows. And oftentimes when people don't disagree and they don't debate and they don't talk, well, a lot of times that's when that isolation continues to be accelerated and it gains momentum to the point where the only community that people are now experiencing in 2025 is within a protest. And when people experience that and it's within a protest and now it's the social normal thing to then get violent, people that you would never thought in a million years would throw a brick or spit on the face of a law enforcement officer start doing way more than even that.
Right.
So, for me as a follower of Christ, who I believe am called to share in the heart of the Father, it makes me incredibly sad. Because not only is it coming from a spiritual and emotional standpoint, but there's the other end of it where it's the intellectual standpoint. Because whether I'm in Chicago or San Francisco, wherever, you go to these protests and you try talking sense or even try having a normal, sensible, intellectual conversation with these individuals. It doesn't go very well. It doesn't go very well at all. In fact, within 10 seconds, they're screaming.
Right.
And there's all sorts of gibberish. Or they don't want to admit that they're wrong, so they'll go, oh, hey, I have to go. Right? Or like, oh, I don't have time for this. I have to go. And so, there's always been violence in Chicago. There's always been protests in Chicago. But with this one, especially when it comes to ICE and immigration, it's sad because there seems to be a higher level of intellectual, emotional, and spiritual ignorance that's tied to this particular issue compared to gang violence.
Right. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think that there is a lot of ignorance, and I feel like it's a spiritual battle more than a physical battle, even more than an intellectual battle. And what's disturbing, and like you said, we have protests here in New Orleans. In fact, actually, of all the cities, I feel like New Orleans kind of sits most of the stuff out a little more. Maybe it's our culture, and it's hot down here, and we move a little bit slower compared to some of the other liberal cities that we see on the news all the time. What was disturbing about Chicago recently was, did you hear the clip of the 911 dispatcher where the police were called to back up ICE and they actually had like a stand down order?
No, I didn't hear about this one.
Yeah, I have a clip here. Let's see, this is just audio.
All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
Okay, 10-4. And again, for all the units that we called to go over that way, 39th Police in Kedzie, if you could just hold off 911, 913. 923, 924, 933, 934. Just disregard that. 39th Place in Kedzie.
Yeah. So, not picking on Chicago itself. We've had our problems with the New Orleans Police Commissioner here, and obviously the attack in New Year's. But they were actually, when you see law enforcement, the cops want to help. That's why they're cops.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? It doesn't matter what 3 letters they have on their vest. They want to help. But they're actually being given orders by people who don't wear the gun, don't wear the badge, don't carry a gun, to actually stand down. And that just goes on to what you were saying about a spiritual battle and an intellectual battle and being fueled by fear. Yeah.
And like in many ways, like I feel awful for our men and women of law enforcement, right? I mean, I have the utmost respect for them, for obviously anybody who choose to protect and serve our American society. But that's just sad, right? And especially in Chicago, right, that I think is very different compared to other cities is the leadership that we have in Chicago is so incredibly biased towards one way. And that one way, unfortunately, is not supportive of law enforcement. Right. And so, if I'm a law enforcement officer in Chicago, it's like, okay, not only do I want the potential of me being the next Derek Chauvin, right? But there's also this element of, well, even if I make one little small mistake or slip up, I know that the leadership that's behind our funding, that's behind our infrastructure, is not going to be anywhere near supportive of what we try to do at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly, incredibly sad that not only that infrastructure and support isn't there, but is actually telling them to not do their job.
Right. It's actually fighting against. And you also have the possibility of being victim of the 10-second clip taken out of context that gets played all over the world. And then judgment by media.
Yep, that's right.
But you said something a moment ago about, we were talking about when you came to the U.S. and as you're an immigrant family and you were facing deportation under Obama. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was 2000. Yeah, I mean, I think this was 2008, 2009, sometime around there. I mean, I remember around this time. Yeah, I think I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, somewhere around there. And, there was a point where our family, for about a year and a half, during that time frame, I mean, we were in downtown Chicago specifically to visit with our immigration attorney probably 5 or 6 different times. Mm-hmm. And, thankfully it ended, there's a happy ending to the story, right? Where, 4 or 5 years after that incident, I'm standing with a group of people in front of a judge, literally, being sworn in as a citizen. Yeah. Which was absolutely incredible. There's a great story I had to share about that, and I'll share in a moment. But I remember being a kid, man. I was a freshman in high school, and I had to be pulled out. My parents had to pull me out because we had to drive all the way to downtown Chicago with our immigration attorney. We had to be there all day, from like 9 a.m. pretty much till like 4 or 5 p.m. And I remember Sam and I, my brother, being sat down, and the immigration attorney, I still remember his name, Kevin Dixler. Man, God bless his soul, man. Yeah. He had to sit us down in front of my parents and go, hey, there's a real possibility that you guys might be able to stay, but then your parents would be deported. Now, my parents did everything the legit way. Our family has always done things the right way. Right. And, the way my parents and I got here, our family is we came here, I believe, on a travel visa. And then before that visa expired, we applied for permanent residency. And then when we applied for permanent residency, obviously we went through the process of getting our green card and then eventually our citizenship papers, right? And something happened from what I remember, right? Like there wasn't a whole lot that was explained to me by the attorney. I would love to call that guy up and be like, hey man, what I know it was 15 years ago, but what happened back then, right?
He's probably busy these days. Yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, I hope he is, man, because he was a great guy, and he knew the law incredibly well. But, something got mixed up with the paperwork, right? And funny enough, my dad, when Obama was a senator in the state of Illinois, actually wrote Obama a letter, and he got a response back pretty much saying, hey, can't help you, right? Like, good luck. Wow. And so, when he became president, right, my dad had a really funny way of thinking about it. It was like, oh, he's a minority, so surely his immigration policies should be pretty fair, right? And should reward, people like us, right? Who's doing everything the right way. And unfortunately, it didn't end up that way, right? Where we ended up doing everything the right way. It costed our family, which we didn't have any money, right? Like it costed us thousands of dollars, a lot of time, a lot of headache, and we had to go before a judge, right? So I mean, literally, I remember the trip to Chicago after the attorney sat my brother and I down and explained that there was a real possibility that only he and I were be allowed to stay on their student visas. The trip after that, we had to go in front of a judge, right? And we had to answer questions. And man, you want to talk about nervous, right? Like, yeah, man, I was so nervous as a 13, 14-year-old and in front of a crowd, in front of a judge. And my only experience, by the way, with anything courtroom was like divorce court. It was on like, or like Judge Judy, right? Like one of those like funny where the guy's not paying alimony or child support and they're like arguing back and forth and, and so like I remember, like she would ask, like the judge was a woman. She would ask me my name and I'd be like, Your Honor, my name is Daniel Kwak, Your Honor. And then like I would just like keep repeating it because I was so nervous. But then thankfully, like we were able to stay. It was a battle for us to be able to stay, right? And obviously that led us to getting our citizenship. And but yeah, to your point, you're right. It was under the Obama administration that our family almost got deported, right? So like for me, when I see stuff like and look, like I'm of the camp of hey, like if you're not a criminal, right? If you work hard and you're contributing to society, I believe that yes, you should get your citizenship, but I also believe at the same time, like, hey, as long as you're on the path to citizenship, like we're not going to deport you as long as you're working or you're contributing to society and you're working on getting your citizenship, right? And you're staying here and you're here and abiding the law, right? But for me, I scratch my head a little bit, Randy, because I'm seeing all these people online on social media trashing ICE, trashing Trump, trashing all this stuff, right? And I'm an individual that had to work incredibly hard to earn my citizenship to be here. And not only that, but really understands and values why the system and the structure is what it is. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I understand at a very, very deep level why things are the way they are, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I scratch my head a little bit. Like, I don't understand, right? Like, do I believe families should be ripped apart? No. Like, would it have sucked if my parents were sent back to Korea and Sam and I were the only ones here? Absolutely. But at the same breath, I also know we did everything legally and we didn't do anything wrong. Therefore, it resulted in us earning our citizenship and obviously thriving today, right? So I remember when I got my citizenship, there was a judge. She said like the coolest thing in the world, and this was right before we got sworn in, right? So she said something along the lines of like, "I'm going off script, and this is a personal story I like to share. But if you go to Japan and you work hard and you contribute to society, you start a business, you create jobs, you do all these things, they will never see you as Japanese, right? If you go to, Argentina and you do the same thing, you work hard, you contribute, you make friends, you're part of society, and you don't do anything wrong, you will still never be seen as a true Argentinian." But then she goes, if you're here and you work hard and you're willing to abide by the law and you're willing to contribute to a society, we will always call you an American. And I'm like, man, that's so true. Because like even when I go back to Korea, right, like, you see a white guy. He could have been born there. He could be speaking better Korean than I do. Right. But they'll never see him as one of their own. They'll never see him as a true Korean. They'll always say, "Oh, he's a white guy who lives in Korea." And I've never been seen or told, "Oh, that's a Korean guy that lives in the United States." Yeah. Yeah, right? That's like, remember the guy, the black guy that plays basketball? He played in the Olympics for Japan. He's Japanese. Oh yeah, Rui Hachimura. Yeah. It's like I don't follow basketball the way you do, but I'll see the Olympics and he comes walking out with the Japanese team. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I'm all about immigration. I believe immigrants, have contributed greatly to society, but it doesn't take long, man, to figure out what the downsides and the consequences of unchecked illegal immigration becomes. Look at Europe. There's so many examples of that all around the world, and I don't think it's, and like, this is not me pointing towards my finger towards one group of people, but I don't think that it's a coincidence that the countries oftentimes with the strongest immigration policies tend to have the most well-balanced economies per capita. Mm-hmm. They tend to have a higher happiness score amongst their citizens. And again, it's not pointing towards that immigration is bad, but usually if you have strict immigration, it usually means you have a system and structure of order within society, right? That there is a lot of logic and reasoning behind what these laws are. And not only that, but they are actually enforced. Right. All right, that was Daniel Kwak of the Kwak Brothers. Make sure you tune in next week because Daniel weighed in on the effects that illegal immigration is having on the economy and the housing market and what we can do to position ourselves for success in the future. And as always, I pray blessings over you and your family. I pray God blesses you coming in and going out. I pray peace, power, and prosperity. And remember that you live in the greatest country on earth, and it's up to you to keep it.
This has been Commission 6-8.
I invite you into the roller coaster ride of my life in the award-winning book, For Such a Time as This, How I Navigated the World of Multifamily Real Estate to Close My First Deal, and How You Can Too. From the very first page, you'll dive into the raw emotions of ambition and resilience, facing one crushing setback after another. Yet, through each trial, I discovered new depths of determination and learned invaluable lessons in negotiation and perseverance. This isn't just a story about overcoming financial hurdles. It's about the profound personal growth that comes from navigating life's toughest challenges. It's about faith, family, and the unwavering belief that setbacks are not the end, but the beginning of something greater. For Such a Time as This, How I Navigated the World of Multifamily Real Estate to Close My First Deal, and How You Can Too, by award-winning author Randy Millette, available on Amazon.